Hello everybody, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch my content. Today we're talking about the latest episode of Doctor Who. I've been going through this pattern of wearing different scarves. This is arguably my most outlandish, out there Doctor Who scarf. You actually can't see how long this thing is. It has wrapped around my body 3 times, but what I love about it is it's inspired by Doctor Who in the fact that you can see, I don't know if you can see the patterns if you zoom in, the Lonely Child, a Dalek, the TARDIS at the bottom, there's a Weeping Angel on it, there's the Seal of Rassilon. So a bunch of stuff going on with this scarf, but we're not here to talk about my scarf. We're here to talk about the latest episode of Doctor Who. And this one was a mixed bag for me. There was so much excitement going into this episode. We had the reveal that Susan is trying to get back hold of the Doctor. The Rani returns, and not just the Rani once, but the Rani twice over. We get another bi-generation, which I actually missed the first time I watched the previous episode. My Disney Plus went straight back to the main menu rather than actually showing me the post-credit scene. But there was a ton of hype for this episode moving in, and it's a 2-parter. So there was a lot hanging on this episode, and did this episode reach the heights I think it could have? Unfortunately not. I think in many ways this episode left me very disappointed, but that's fine, because a part 1 can always be redeemed by the part 2. And so I'm really hoping that next week's episode is much, much better. I'm not even going to try to touch on the story, because the mystery is such a great part of this episode. The mystery of, what's happening with the Doctor? What's happening with Belinda? Who's the Rani? All of this coming together is great. And the unraveling of... I kind of started on a tangent there. The unraveling of the mystery behind why Conrad is in the position of power that he's in. The mystery behind these giant skeletons. There's so many different mysteries going on. And that's what's so great. This entire episode is built around mystery and doubt that's created by mystery. And so we'll go throughout the episode and we'll kind of put pieces together just so that you can see what's going on. But, the episode started rather poorly for me, unfortunately. This is our big reveal of who the Rani is and her level of evil. And while we do see, the Rani's not necessarily a nice person. I mean, she murdered a mother in front of her family. She turned an entire family into just different animals and stole the youngest kid. She's evil, but the performance wasn't there for me. And I know I'll get slack for that. But the performance wasn't there for me. And I think if you're going to build up this great big villain, you can't show how powerful she is by her picking on a medieval family in need. This family is so defenseless. This family is so weak from a character point of view. Anyone could have just gone in and stolen a child. It doesn't necessarily build the Rani up as this threat. It's important for figuring out what she's doing later on in the episode, but to establish her as a character, no, she comes off rather weak. And then we get into the title sequence, and then we get the big reveal. The Doctor and Belinda are married, and they're happily married, and they have a child named Poppy, who we should recognize. This was a very interesting route to take. And I think it added so much mystery and drama. This is when the episode started to win me back a little bit. I was lost by the Rani sequence, slowly started to make it back with this. And I think that's good. If you have a plot beat that can turn a bad start into something interesting, then you're doing well. And I really enjoyed the dynamic between the Doctor and Belinda. And they're slowly trying to figure out, they're trying to figure out life, and they're trying to figure out what the hell is going on in this world. And this world is crazy. I've said the word mystery a lot in this review. Yes, this is a mysterious world where basically people are designed to start having doubts about the world. The whole point of this episode is to raise doubts in people's minds. So there's this mystery, that underlying mystery that takes place, and watching that come to life in the eyes of Belinda and the eyes of the Doctor, that was great. But where this episode really then took a step back again for me was, I've never not enjoyed a character as much as Conrad in a long time. That was terribly worded. I'm not saying he's so bad I don't like him. I'm saying he's badly written. He's not interesting. Nothing about Conrad is interesting to me. And so to see him kind of return as this big bad was very, very, very disappointing, especially now that we're in a position with the fourth wall breaking. I have been saying since like the David Tennant 2 era, since those holiday specials, I'm not enjoying the fourth wall breaking. And yes, there was a sequence I thought was rather inspired where the Doctor meets Doctor Who fans. But I think that was jumping the shark. And this episode where we're literally getting the Doctor having a story read to him. And that's the biggest issue I have with the Rani in general, especially back when the Rani was Mrs. Flood. We don't know the extent of their powers, and it's never truly explained, because if the Rani is just a time lady, which we know she is, she's able to do things just because the plot says she can, and Mrs. Flood is in places and knows things and breaks the fourth wall in a way that no villain has been able to before, and it points towards her being more than just a time lady. The Doctor, up until recently, was never able to just break the fourth wall. So why do we have characters like the Rani, when she was still Mrs. Flood, directly addressing the audience? I don't like the fourth wall breaking. I don't mind when shows break the fourth wall, but not when it's an established show like Doctor Who that's been around for more than 60 years and fourth wall breaking hasn't been a thing. Sorry, that was a weird tangent for me to go on. The biggest plus of the episode for me, I love Ruby Sunday. I think she's amazing. I love Millie Gibson. She's fantastic. So having Ruby back in this episode was very, very exciting for me. I think Ruby is my new Rose Tyler. And I said when we first met Ruby, like, she's very much just this era's Rose Tyler. She was there to be the audience surrogates in the first season. And she's really grown into her own, and she can go on adventures without the Doctor, much like what ends up happening to Rose Tyler after the parting of the ways. So I love Ruby. I'm glad she's back. And I enjoy what she was given in this episode. We've seen how she can hold her own. We can see how she can stand up for herself, especially in the previous episode, which was just her by herself with Conrad. Gross. The dumbest little Easter egg that I really loved was the Doctor referring to himself as John Smith. The Doctor's alias, whenever he's supposed to be human, has always been John Smith. But it really gave me a call back to the last time the Doctor thought he was truly human, which was in Human Nature, where his name was also John Smith. So I just love how these two characters both refer to themselves as John Smith, much like the Doctor refers to himself as the Doctor. But we get David Tennant's John Smith, who is completely different to Ncuti Gatwa's John Smith. I really enjoyed that. How both, versions of the Doctor, how both actors have their own version of who John Smith would be. Arguably the coolest thing I have seen from Doctor Who in such a long time is just the monster designs, or the alien designs in this episode. Firstly, let's start off with those giant skeleton monsters walking over the city. Those are so freaking cool. I don't know if any of you guys watch Attack on Titan or have read the manga, but tell me that's not giving Eren Jaeger Final Titan energy. Come on. That looked so incredibly cool. Just these giant skeleton beasts towering over the city. So cool. And then we get those, they mention the name, I can't remember, those things that stick their fingers in the black goo. Super creepy, but so well designed. And then we just get those drones with the helmets. I think there was just so much effort put into the designs of the monsters of this episode. And just the architecture of the Bone Palace. Everything was so cool. From a visual standpoint, it was awesome. I've mentioned my dislike of the Rani already, but I think one of the biggest frustrations for me is the characterization of Mrs. Flood, or the Rani, right? We've seen Mrs. Flood be this capable woman traveling through time and space, breaking the fourth wall, being sassy, and now that she's bi-generated, her personality is completely changed. She is no longer this sassy, independent woman. She's this old lady who gets bossed around by a younger version of herself. I don't get it. What's the point of building up Mrs. Flood for seasons and seasons just to have her be a frail old lady as soon as the bi-generation happens? Like, don't give me 2 seasons of Mrs. Flood just to make her scared and an old lady and useless and walking around making sandwiches. I think a really cool detail was when Conrad is holding the baby, the god of wishes, and we hear the baby's laugh. The ha 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 ha. I can't do different notes. It's a weakness of mine. But hearing the laugh, which is obviously an indication of the realm of the gods, which was just so cool. It's a nice little Easter egg. I really appreciated that. And I'm excited to see what comes out of that. There is a sequence where the Doctor's watching TV and Rogue appears. Love Jonathan Groff. I liked the sequence. I thought it was great. But then we get this reveal where Rogue is like, Doctor, I love you. And then he fades to black. Do we really believe that? I loved the episode Rogue. I thought it was great. I said it felt like one of the best classic, I say classic as in, David Tennant's era, not classic Doctor Who. But it felt like that version of Doctor Who to me. Like the girl in the fireplace, very similar vibes. But the Doctor and Rogue spent one night together. With Rogue being the character he is, he's basically a Captain Jack Harkness. I don't think he would fall in love with the Doctor after one night. They might really be interested in one another, but using the word love felt very, very soon, my guy. That's like dates 3 kind of stuff, not night 1 kind of stuff. So there's 2 final points I want to raise in this episode, both of them Time Lord related. So let's talk about the first one, which is the Rani. I've mentioned before, but in the second half of the episode, her performance, I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it. And this is no, knock to the actress. I'm sure she was directed in a very specific way. But it feels like Russell T Davies is really trying to recapture Janssens' master energy and a lot of Missy energy as well, the mistress. Like, this version of the Rani is basically just a carbon copy of Missy, except with less charisma and less natural drive. And that's the disappointing thing. We build up the Rani for so long just for her to feel like a knockoff version of the Master. That's just how I felt. I was very disappointed with the version of the Rani that we got. And then the second thing that's Time Lord related, we get the return that Omega is returning. That's very exciting. And I do like that Russell T Davies is really trying to bring back these classic era villains and monsters. And we've been getting that a lot, especially if you consider the Toy Maker and stuff. It is interesting because we've not had any, these type of classic Doctor Who villains return. We haven't had the Daleks, we haven't had the Cybermen. We haven't had villains like that within Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor. But we've had the Toy Maker return. We've had the Midnight Monster return. We've had Omega return. We've had Rani return. So we have all of these different characters return. Ncuti Gatwa's era was supposed to be a jumping on point for new fans. And so what they've done is they've said, no, we won't have villains return. We'll start afresh. And then they proceed to do even deeper cuts for their villains and stuff. Where if you haven't watched, classic Doctor Who, I think that's just out of the frame. You just can't see my collection of Doctor Who DVDs. If you haven't watched that far back, you're going to be confused about who these characters are. So they're trying to do this new thing where it's a new era for people to jump on, but then they make it more confusing by having older characters return. So it's a bit confusing. But yes, guys, mixed bag of an episode for me. I'd love to know how you guys feel. Please comment down below. Let me know your thoughts and feelings. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Do not be afraid to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I hope to see you guys again in the next video.